Arturo Vasquez, Mortal Kombat 11 is our new cover story. A couple weeks ago, a month ago, I forget exactly when it was. It was right before GDC. We went to NetherRealm Studios in Chicago.
Yeah, we got to basically talk to a bunch of the people there. Got a tour of the studio. Got to play some of Mortal Kombat 11 and basically learn a ton of stuff.
It was a day filled with a lot of interviews. It was weird because people were tweeting at me saying "Hey, did you get to play as Centurion? Who's your favorite character?" And it's no, I don't think I touched the game while I was there, which is crazy because it was just interview after interview.
I did play as a few characters, but
oh, okay, interesting. Had you been to NetherRealm before?
We had there was a preview event where a bunch of people got sort of the studio tour, but it was interesting to be back there very, very quickly after that for this.
Hey, now it's a cover story and it's just us. Let's really soak this in.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go visit that studio. It's cool that it's such a big, powerful studio in the Midwest. It's so different.
Yeah.
And just thinking about the most consistent game studios of all time. There's obviously, you might say whoever makes NBA 2K. That team, pretty consistent every year for hitting a crazy high quality mark. But think of NetherRealm, every 2 years, like clockwork, they're releasing a game, and for the last 4 games, they've all been excellent, right? It's crazy that studio...
This would be 5.
Okay, there we go. Just constantly turning that stuff around. It is a wonder, and it's a nice, humble studio down there. It's awesome.
They're also one of the few sort of fighting game developers from the West, because it's usually, you hear about most of the big fighting games are all from Japan. And there are exceptions, there's the Iron Galaxy and Twin Galaxies, the Killer Instinct people basically. And you can sort of, I would make the argument that Ubisoft Montreal, or the studio behind For Honor, is in.
Oh, really? Montreal?
Yeah.
You consider them a fighting game studio in some way at this point?
Well, I consider For Honor a fighting game.
Do you really? Oh, that's interesting.
In terms of fighting game developers outside of Japan, those are really the 3 that come to mind. There's a lot of indies.
For the big dogs, yeah, for sure.
But NetherRealm is when you think about fighting games that aren't from Japan, it's really just Mortal Kombat in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you talked to Ed Boon about that specifically, just about being such an outlier in the West.
Yeah, it's not something that he obviously thinks about. It's we gotta rep America in the fighting game genre. But it was something that he sort of, I don't know if I'm projecting, but it felt like that was when he started thinking about I guess we are sort of one of the few big AAA studios that has gone all in on fighting games in a way that most studios don't. Even the Fight Night people, you don't see Fight Night games anymore. So
right, and the fact that Mortal Kombat's still selling well, at least 9 and 10, and Injustice is selling well. It's wild that they've pulled this off.
Yeah, when Mortal Kombat X came out, it was one of the best-selling games of the year, across genres.
Yeah.
So it's strange how as much as we think of fighting games as a niche genre, how popular they can be. Right.
I was interested in listening to your interview with Ed Boon, where you kind of wound back the clock a little bit and talked about, the fall of Midway and how the transition to Warner Brothers happened. And Ed Boon he's mentioned before, you were talking to a bunch of other publishers. It didn't have to be Warner Brothers, but he just quickly mentioned in an interview, I was flying all over the world. I had meetings in Paris. Okay, Ubisoft. Nice.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think of a world where Ubisoft could have owned Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
But Warner Brothers ended up making the bid.
Yeah.
Is that crazy?
It is. It's weird to think about. I know it's a weird industry, but wouldn't that be
it was
wild?
the most likely choice because they were already working on Midway was falling apart as Mortal Kombat versus DCU was happening.
Yeah.
So I imagine that they like working with those guys, and the first thing they did, it tells us, the first thing Warner Brothers said was, "We'll just give you another 6 months to work on the game," right?
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see what would have happened if Mortal Kombat was owned by Ubisoft, because it would have been a lot harder to get an Injustice game had that been the case, right?
Interesting. Yeah. Also, For Honor, it'd be For Honor : Mortal Kombat, as
That's
everybody
right.
knows that full
Now
crossover would have existed.
That would be a game.
Yeah. Forget Rabbids.
I want to see
in
that
there.
game.
Dan, you've been a fan of Mortal Kombat your entire life. Out of the womb, you're screaming about it.
During the Super Nintendo era, I think we could say that. And I
Okay.
played a little 10. But
Okay, and you like 10.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm just waiting. Fighting games have fallen off for me a lot since my youth, when I used to be a competitive Marvel vs. Capcom 2 player.
Yeah.
Or Capcom vs. SNK and all that stuff. They just there was a period of time where I just nope. I'm done with them. Mm-hmm. I can still do a Hadouken with the best of them, but
it is telling that you went back, at least for, I'd imagine, Mortal Kombat 9, especially 10.
Yeah, for 10, and I did, but it was a quick trip. It was a quick visit. And,
sure.
I got to see how much had changed in all those years that I skipped all the fighting games, and now it's seeing broken bones splintered on the screen. It's like, wow, we really did it.
We really have peaked. Yeah, I had a weird journey with Mortal Kombat where, like, I played Mortal Kombat 2 a fair amount when I was a kid, but not that much. And then I really got into Deadly Alliance, which was bizarre, but that's like the one that I played the most, strangely enough. And then, I've probably said like, hey, is all that gore really necessary a couple times on this podcast? Sincerely, though, when I found out we were doing this cover story trip, I absorbed the story mode from Mortal Kombat 9 and 10. It's like, and it's so nice that 9's that reboot, so it's basically starting from the beginning. What a delight. I was so into it. It was just like silly comic book level storytelling, and I was not expecting to enjoy it that much. It was a little bit like, all right, let's go through these. Let's see how it goes. I am excited for this. I'm very excited. That's why I was so excited to go on the trip, finally meet Ed Boon. I've never met him before. What's your take on Ed Boon?
He's a really cool guy. Like he is very like this very reserved. Like his cadence is very not calculated, but very like he doesn't overtalk. Like he basically like his delivery is very calm. But he's dropping stuff that like when he's talking about it, you're like, this is like super interesting. But he talks about it like it's, I don't know, like this is just part of.
Yeah, I assume everybody's been working on the same series since 1992.
Yeah.
No, but it's so crazy because, he came in when we were like eating lunch and we were filming the rapid fire interview, which went up on Wednesday, which was a lot of fun. And he was just the best for that. But we were filming that right after lunch. And so when he came in for lunch and he wasn't saying anything, I was like, oh, this is going to be a rough rapid fire. Like, he's not going to be on board for this. Let's see how it goes. And then he could not have been more on board during the actual filming, and he was laughing up. It was such a relief to see him enjoy that overall.
Yeah.
It was very silly. And
he strikes me as a really humble guy who's like very like measured and isn't like super. I guess maybe in his head a lot of like, I don't think I know he's aware of his legacy, but I don't think he's like the kind of person who's like, I'm the guy who makes Mortal Kombat.
I don't think he's ever had that thought of like, looks in the mirror and screams in the morning, that type of thing.
That's me, the guy who did that flip.
Also, one of the basic ideas going into the studio that I don't think I fully expected, but zooming out, of course you do. But it was interesting, especially during that rapid fire. It came out a couple times after that, but especially during the rapid fire, asked him like, scale of 1 to 10, how much do you guys want to work on a new IP? He's like, 9.6. Like, just the feeling from him to like, oh my God, I love Mortal Kombat. It is his life at this point. It's his life's work. But at the same time, like, we need to unleash Nether Realms. We can do so much more.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see what kind of game they make, because obviously they've made nothing but fighting games so far. So it'd be interesting to see, like, are they learning new disciplines? Is there things like, would they make like an action game sort of like Shaolin Monks, which they've done, but they've done before. I'd be interested in to see like what are they most passionate about outside of fighting games, because it feels in a lot of ways, because it was sort of, hey, it's a small team that made Mortal Kombat and it became so popular that we just had to build onto it. Like, what if they weren't making fighting games? Is that group of people passionate about?
Well, that was one of the craziest things that I saw on the trip, was just walking around the studio. I kept seeing what I thought was just like God of War on a monitor over there. Like, what is that over there? And then eventually realized like, oh no, that's the way the crypt looks in Mortal Kombat 11, is they actually have the camera third person behind the player character,
following them around
as you're walking around. And they stress like, don't expect like an action adventure game.
Yeah,
but
it's not like a thing where you're jumping over like anything, or like, there's no real action to it. It's mostly like an interactive way to walk around and unlock stuff in the crypt, and there's going to be puzzles, things where you're moving back and forth across the island trying to open different locks with keys and things like that.
But even seeing that glimpse of what the crypt looks like in Mortal Kombat 11, it's like, oh, it's nice to see the studio get those experiments out of the way. It's like, if they want to change the way things are done in the future, the idea like, hey, we're experimenting with just third-person camera. Let's see how it goes.
I just like, don't you think at this point they sort of like pigeonholed themselves into, after so many Mortal Kombats and with the success of the recent games, it's just like,
you can't get out of it.
Why would you take that risk, right? Like, it's got to be hard.
Yeah, I would say like it would be the next entry after this. I think would be the time to do it, because they've done 2 Injustice games, and I think that as much as people like Injustice, like I like Injustice, right? I think people, obviously Mortal Kombat X is their highest selling game, right, and not Injustice 2. So I think that if there were a fandom that we're going to have to take the hit, I would prefer it to be Injustice, just because I think I like the Mortal Kombat games more. I think the Mortal Kombat games sell better. So I think if there is an opportunity for them to say like, hey, we want to make something that isn't a fighting game, I think the break between a new Mortal Kombat and something else, I think would be the time to do it.
Yeah, but, although, I mean, talking to Ed Boon, he even said like, it would be nice to take a break and let anticipation build up a little bit. Because it would be nice to have like that level of splashing that 9 had. Like 11, I think, looks like a super solid game from what we played, but 9 was also just like, wait, what? We have to pay attention to Mortal Kombat again? This is actually great. It's like having that level of anticipation, I think, is key.
It could also help with a lot of their long-term support of it. Like they could support Mortal Kombat 11 longer than they have been other games, right? Because they basically they release the game, 1 year of support, and then we move on to the next game. So I think Mortal Kombat 11 has like what it needs to be around for longer than their previous games, for sure. So
okay, what about like the game itself? What did you learn? What was the biggest takeaway that stood out with you?
We got sort of some more info on obviously the big thing that we got was like getting a look at Centurion, sort of that new character, who is one of the few new characters. Obviously, Mortal Kombat X had a ton of new characters, but they're sort of, scaling that back to say, hey, here's your favorite characters, and the whole motif, obviously, this time around is the time traveling thing, which lets them implement sort of new versions of the characters while also having like, hey, here's Scorpion as you remember him, but also here's one that is a proof of concept of, hey, here's how he could look if he was just a dude, right?
Yeah.
And so there was that, but Centurion is this elder god who is part of the time traveling story, which involves Chronica, this character who's stronger than an elder god, manipulator of time, going back and saying, hey, you guys killed Shinnok, but now the good guys are too powerful. I need to rebalance the scales a little bit.
Basically, Raiden, you effing suck. I'm going to have to fix this for you. Yeah. And so, Centurion is seen as the opposite of Shinnok, who's the elder god of death, because she's the elder god of nature and life. So that's why she's being thrown into the mix here.
Yeah.
You into the Mortal Kombat storylines, Dan?
No.
Dude, it's so silly.
I
so
saw her
fun.
finishing move and it was really cool.
All right. There we go.
There were a lot of
story.
people. There were a lot of people talking about, this doesn't fit with Mortal Kombat. It's more of an Injustice thing. But there are way crazier fatalities than that in Mortal Kombat 3. There's one where Cyrax has so many bombs he blows up the world. Like there's just a lot of really dumb. I actually appreciated that fatality as sort of a return of, with them getting more and more elaborate and more realistic. I like that there's one that's like, I'm this powerful. I'm going to crush you like something a little bit more comical, I think is kind of cool.
Stage friend reactions I saw. Number one, saying a lot of people saying she looks like Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, which I did not think about until the internet pointed out repeatedly. But all right, fair point. A lot of people saying, "Ooh, was she teased previously?"
Yes, she was in that story trailer.
Okay.
The back of her head was in the story trailer.
But even in previous Mortal Kombats, like the idea of this elder god of life.
She was in like Jade's ending in Mortal Kombat 9.
Okay, that level of cut I love. Also, a lot of people saying, "Well, so long, Rain and Tremor." Because it seems like she has their moves. What do you think about that?
I don't know. Like, I don't think that precludes them from including them in the game.
Yeah.
I'm not super versed in Tremor specifically, so maybe it is one of those things where he straight up has a thing where he lobs a boulder overhead and underhead, in which case maybe. But I can't imagine that they look at that stuff and say, well, I guess we put in such and so we can't do this, right? Because that just seems like a weird reason to limit yourself. That said, I don't know that either of those characters' chances are good because they're not among the most popular characters. Like, sorry, but
right. So we have a video going live on Friday. That's kind of a full breakdown of Centurion's moves. We have one of the best players within NetherRealm actually kind of walking through, laying out strategy and stuff, which is great. You did a great job on that video too, Serial. It seems like Centurion is designed for range, not complicated combos.
Right. She has some combos up close, but for the most part, she is meant to stop aggression, right? And she has a lot of really interesting tools to do that. I think honestly, the most interesting thing that she does is she can create this field of like vapor, and if you're in that vapor, you basically can't combo. So
that's insane.
So you can do combos and she'll get hit by them, but she can block in between each of those attacks.
Yeah.
So basically you cannot combo her when she's in that field, which is like a super interesting thing that I don't think I've seen in a fighting game before.
Right. Other character stuff that stood out to me, I liked how passionate the team was about reinventing Jackie. Like, we feel like we finally nailed this character now in Mortal Kombat 11. I think she's going to be a surprising character in Mortal Kombat 11 story mode in general.
I saw her in like their breakdowns that they do for individual characters. She looks awesome. She basically they've really leaned into Muay Thai for her. So she has a Sagat-esque stance now. There's a move in Muay Thai where you sort of kick the same opponent multiple times. And she does that, but like crazy fast because she has augmented legs, sort of, the opposite of her dad. So she'll like have like these hyper fast kicks that she can do.
Yeah.
She is a military like weapons expert. So she has like grenades and stuff that she can fire. And the way you can change sort of what projectiles she has on the screen. Like, I think she's like really cool. And she's like one of the few close range characters in that game that I've seen, because a lot of the characters, because Scorpion uses a sword, Scarlet has like a scythe that she makes out of blood, so there's a lot more characters that attack from mid range, and she's one of the few characters who's like, I can either go long range or short range, and sort of those are my two speeds. And I think that's like super cool to have characters like that.
Yeah, for sure. Other character things that stood out to me. Maybe I'm a simpleton and didn't fully absorb this, but they're like, I think in Mortal Kombat 11 we're able to push through like the gear and the story, the idea harder that Scorpion is Japanese and Sub-Zero is Chinese.
Yeah.
And like the differences between them in that, where it's like, yeah, I don't think it's ever really been emphasized too much. Have you ever thought about that,
Does
Dan?
anybody care?
There are people who do care.
Of course there are people who care.
Because I mean,
Mortal
he's Scorpion's been part of the Shirai Ryu clan for a while, and Sub-Zero's been part of the Lin Kuei.
Yeah.
Right. But that has been sort of the service that we've had of like, okay, well, I guess that's vaguely Japanese, I guess, but them leaning more, especially in Mortal Kombat X, where they got real names,
Right.
Like I think his Scorpion's name is Master Musashi or something like, or Hanzo Musashi, I think, or something like that, something like that. Sorry, but they gave him like a real name because part of it was him coming back to life. But
Well, Dan, what do you want from Mortal Kombat 11?
I want another movie.
That's what you're getting though. Like that's the you're getting one of
That is
these
the
every
story mode.
What do you want me to
every
say?
4 years you basically get a Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah.
Because that you can go watch. I wouldn't recommend you. I'd prefer you buy the game, but like you get a 2.5 hour movie of Mortal Kombat stuff.
I want a really cheesy early '90s action movie.
Have you played the story modes of Mortal Kombat? Because I feel
That's
like it
exactly
is
what you're
exactly
getting.
what it is.
It's sort of like that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but what do you want from the gameplay? Like,
What do I want from the game? That's
when
the
you're
thing.
diving into 11, what are you going to go for?
That's the thing. Like, I don't know what I want it to do. I mean, like, I think it's so set, and I think that's kind of the danger for the series. It's great and all. Everyone loves them. But me personally, I don't know. You'd have to do a really big shakeup to get me interested. Like, and that's any fighting game right now.
Yeah.
Like, they're all very... Nobody wants to push too hard because they're very set in what their audience wants and expects, especially for the competitive scene. And you've already got a great formula. Why change it? I get that. Mm-hmm. But for me, it would take something to shake it up, and I don't know what that is. Maybe RPG elements.
Right. Well, they
Something
do. They
interesting.
pride themselves in the studio of like, we like to shake things up for every entry. Obviously, this time the gear and the augment system is the biggie that they're
especially
pushing.
like customizable moves, which are like the
Which is crazy, especially when they talk about like they're still up in the air about whether or not they would ever add moves down the road.
Yeah, they said like if that's what people want, we are down to do that stuff. But I think that is the make or break thing for this game, where running into different Scorpions, you might have different builds of a character, and I think that's super cool. They did say that for ranked and competitive play, they're going to stick to these preset variations, just because it'd be hard at a high level to say, hey, I'm here's the Scorpion, I don't know what he's going to do, and I'm going to spend the first round of this rank match figuring out what he can even do.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. They did say they're going to allow stuff like gaining extra XP or currency.
Right.
Like if you have those augments.
Right. So you can have gear, but that's separate from like the gear is separate from the moves, right?
Gotcha.
So like you can have stuff where if I'm on a win streak, I get more XP, more coins. But you'd have to select one of the preset variables, which like that is to me the biggest question, where I get why they would do that, but part of me feels like, just at least for the first month or so, let people run wild, see what happens. Let people build their own version of a crazy character, and if it is like as big of an issue of like, there's just straight up combinations that are just completely broken, maybe then you tool that back. But I would prefer that they start with the being more open to having different crazy things possible, right? Because that's the thing that makes this game.
That's a balancing nightmare.
Yeah,
and for them
sure.
trying to
like
get
I
out of
said,
the gate.
I get why they would do it.
Yeah.
But I would like to see what would happen at like a high level of like, hey, this is the build. Because what ends up happening is, in something like this, I imagine it would be like, hey, this is the Jade that you want to run because this is the most effective Jade. But I like the idea of it being possible. Like maybe there's a chance, if there's any chance at all, that there are two versions of Scorpion that are both equally viable. I think that system redeems itself.
It's interesting.
And even on a casual level, I like the idea that I can aspire to be a professional player, even though I'm never going to be, right?
Yeah.
But the idea of like, hey, if I like the specific version of Scorpion that I've made, knowing that like, well, if you want to actually take the game seriously, you're going to have to stick to one of these three, predetermined buckets. That's a little disappointing. But again, I totally agree with you. It's a balancing nightmare, and I get why they do it.
Right.
I think that's one of the big challenges with fighting games, especially like these huge franchises. Like you can't change too much, or people will freak. And what do you do from iteration to iteration? Like it's like, hey, I've got a couple new characters. Yeah.
But then no matter what, the community will be outraged because their favorite character is included.
So it's
because they have
wild.
to
Yeah,
leave it at
like
some
as a
point.
genre, how like restricted they are in terms of what they can do from title to title.
Yeah, but NetherRealm, I think more than a lot of studios does a really good job of saying like, hey, even if you don't want to take the game seriously, there's a ton of stuff to do. Like, you know, there's the story mode, there's the Towers of Time, which have like a ton of new stuff in them now. Like you have certain tag team matches, which they said it's not going to be its own mode for now. But it's one of those things where certain towers, like a Shaolin Monk's tower, for example, will have you play as Liu Kang and Kung Lao at the same time. And so you can work through that tower, and you'd have modes where you'd be able to fight as both characters, right?
But not local multiplayer.
Not local multiplayer.
Not local co-op, I should say.
Yeah, there are co-op bosses, though, where you can take on a boss. They'll have way more health than any fighting game character could possibly have. And the idea is you play one, and meanwhile your friend is sort of throwing assists out when they can. And when they die, you guys swap places, and you do the same thing like 3 times.
That's complicated. It's a weird message to get around.
It's a weird boss. It's similar if you've played Injustice 2's sort of guild raids. That's basically what it was, where you and a group of friends would go in and try to fight a really hard boss at the same time. But stuff like that, I think, is a good way of saying, hey, I just want to interact with this fighting system. I don't want to worry about whether or not I'm good. So being able to say, hey, here's this really hard tower that's based on a specific challenge. Like sometimes it'll be like, hey, there are bats flying at the screen, or a lot of these characters have energy abilities. Yeah. So hey, here's a consumable that gives me energy resistance. Being able to just strategize that way, I think, is an interesting way to attract people. But they did say that you wouldn't be able to buy the consumables. So there's a ton of like different assists and stuff that you can bring in with you with towers that would let you gain an advantage that way. And they're meant to be like, hey, if you don't go in with any abilities, you're not going to be able to beat this, basically. Right.
And I also like the idea of like different bosses along the way in Towers of Time. There'll be modifiers and things. So you'll want to swap out your augments to like best take on that boss. Like so, a little for the easy comparison, a little World of Light there from Smash Brothers, right?
Yeah, and they have all the gear you get is sort of the way it works is when you get a piece of gear, it'll drop without the ability to slot in augments, which are the things that give you like, hey, like here's plus 10 bonus experience, or like, hey, plus 10 damage to this special in the single player, like not or casual matches basically. And then as you play with that particular piece of gear, it'll level up, and you can slot in more things into it.
Yeah.
And so that gives you like just having those sort of RPG-esque goals, I think is
RPG elements, Dan.
I was going to bring that
baby.
up once we finish here.
Okay.
Having those goals, I think, is a good way to motivate people to just keep playing, and eventually think like, even if they're wrong, right? Like even if they're like, I could probably take people online, right? And then they go online and get their ass kicked, or maybe not. Like I did better during that beta than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to do.
Is that why you played so much of it? You're feeling so good about it.
So like. But even like anything they mentioned this is like anything you can do to get people to sort of start experimenting with different modes. So there could, they said that they're likely going to have challenges of like, hey, play a match in as to get things in the single player, you might have to play a match in versus, and that'll just be it's not going to be an achievement or anything. It's just going to be, hey, if you play this match, we'll give you some experience. Just try it out, right?
Totally.
So they do a really good job of that, and they've done that for a while. But like it feels a lot more fleshed out in 11 than it has been before.
Yeah. Dan?
Yes.
Captivated?
So I decided what I wanted during that conversation.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I want a roguelite, turn-based Mortal Kombat tower climber dungeon crawler.
Turn-based.
Turn-based.
So you don't want Mortal Kombat 11 at all?
Mortal Kombat characters.
Okay.
Right?
You want auto chess but with Mortal Kombat or what?
That's a good idea. I like what I'm hearing. That would also work.
All right. You just want a good version of Mortal Kombat 2 and then some freaky roguelikes.
No. It's a tower climbing dungeon crawler.
Okay.
Turn-based. You get all kinds of crazy gear for your characters. You still get to do finishing moves on your opponents. This is gold.
That is like offhandedly, it is one of those things where you look at Street Fighter and you look at a lot of other franchises, and they've started branching out of like, hey, look, people really like these characters, but maybe they're not into fighting games. Let's make a puzzle game with Street Fighter characters. Let's start commodifying these characters in different ways.
And they do that for Mortal Kombat, but they always package it in as like a bonus.
Right, it's always part of the fighting game. So and they have that mobile fighting game, which is very different and more simplistic. But like I think there's a ton of room to make games with Mortal Kombat characters that aren't fighting games, just to appeal to the wider crowd. But who is going to make that game, right? Like I think NetherRealm would have enough feel
have so much ownership over it.
Yeah, that they would want to be the ones to make it, and at that point, may as well make another fighting game because they'll sell super well.
I know. It's a silly thing. Other things we're not going to talk about in the month of coverage. You wanted to get off your chest here, Serial?
Yeah. So like I said, you won't be able to buy consumables.
Yes.
There are leaderboards, which is another way to encourage people to come in.
So like rewards at the end of every week for Towers of Time.
Right. So it's like, hey, depending on your score in the ladder relative to other people. So it'll be one of the things. If you see your friend beat you, you can try to beat them to get a higher place on the ladder.
Yeah.
There's like I said, augments. Got to play a little bit with Noob, he's really cool. We'll have a match with him later on in the month. But
I think it's coming up next week.
Yeah. So and then later in the month we'll have like sort of not video but like breakdowns of like Aaron Black and Devora, like who are characters that people haven't seen yet. So that'll be interesting. A lot of crazy stuff in those characters that I don't want to spoil, but
yeah, I'm happy with the direction they're taking Devora. This is like one of my favorite characters from
a lot of
X.
interesting mechanics at play with Devora for sure.
Yeah. Good Devora tease. Also,
No
more
kidding,
videos.
now I'm interested.
Yeah, there we go. Story interview coming up later on in the month. We also make the two best players within another realm face each other. That's going to be a fun video. And there's also the thing of like setting it up. It's like I was fully planning on just having like the gameplay, and it's like I should probably get them on camera. And I'm so happy they did because they have so much personality and they're so great on mic too. So it's a super fun match. And then also coming up soon, but wrapping up the month of coverage roughly, we're going to have another episode of this podcast, a special bonus episode called Answering Mortal Kombat 11's Lingering Questions, which hopefully, unless it falls through, hopefully we're going to get a couple designers from Mortal Kombat 11 on the show and we're going to ask them dozens and dozens of questions from the community. Hopefully not, hey, is this character in it? Is this character in it? But it's like it's a good opportunity to get into the nitty-gritty design questions about Mortal Kombat 11. I think there's a lot of fun stuff to learn there.
So send us your questions if you've got questions about Mortal Kombat 11.
Yes, specifically we'll have a post on GameInformer.com where we're looking for your questions. You can leave them as a comment there, but we'll let you know. So if you just keep your eyes on GameInformer.com, it's going to be a lot of fun stuff. I recommend checking out that rapid fire video. Those are always fun. Ed Boon was a hoot. Hey, and Dan Tack, we do this every month. We rotate our cover story every month.
We do?
Yeah, sharing new info. It's always fun. And I do always like those podcasts, like giving people just an opportunity to ask the designers whatever they want. The only barrier to getting your question answered is us, and we just want the most interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very
Ask
low.
an interesting question.
Yes, that's really all we need here, and then we can ask a designer. It'll be fun. GameInformer.com/Mortal Kombat 11. I'm sorry, /Mortal Kombat.
/Mortal Kombat.
There we go. That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.